What's up? It's James, and it's all in the name. This is Coolest. We're bringing you the best of a lot of everything on the planet. So make sure to like and subscribe because we're coming up with fresh content and new ideas every single day. Today we have a fun one, and today we're going to talk about the best restaurant in Minneapolis, Minnesota. All right, and we're talking the best. The way I would define the best is if you have one night. If you have one night to go out, if you have one night in Minneapolis, where are you going to go? And for me, I'm going to go to the staple of Minneapolis. I'm going to go to the place where presidents go. I'm going to go to the place where athletes go. I'm going to go to the classic spot that never disappoints, the most consistent spot. And I'm sorry, Birch, and I'm sorry, Spoon and Stable. It's not you, it's Manny's. A lot of the aforementioned reasons is the reason I picked Manny's. Manny's is a staple. Manny's never disappoints because it's consistent. It's quality food. It has a ton of great options on the menu. And it's in a perfect location. I can't say enough great things about it. As always, we're gonna jump right into it. Let's go. I actually grew up in the Minneapolis and St. Paul area, so I know a lot about the history of Manny's. I didn't have a chance to go there a lot when I was younger because frankly, I couldn't afford it, all right? If you want a high roll in Minneapolis, this would be a high roller spot. And we're not talking about small food for big dollars, you know, a Michelin type restaurant. But if you're looking to have an indulgent, and if you're looking to spend some of your paycheck, and you're looking to have a very, very rewarding night, you want to go to Manny's, all right? You're probably gonna walk out of there at about $100 a person if you have a couple drinks. That's pretty much the going rate in today's world if you want to have an indulgent, classy meal. All right, so the location is downtown Minneapolis. It's one of my favorite locations of any steakhouse because it's actually connected to the W Hotel. So they're separate from the W Hotel, but it's really cool. There's actually a door that leads right into Manny's. And it's a green door and it just has a bull on it. And it's kind of like a secrecy type thing. It's kind of like, I guess, an obvious speakeasy, if you will, because there's a door, it's green, there's a bull on it, but it doesn't say Manny's. So it's a little subtle and there's a little bit of secrecy to it, which makes it all that much more cool. And it goes both ways. So if you're at the W in the living room, which is a very cool bar, and you get a little hungry, you can open the door and go right into Manny's. And then conversely, if you're at Manny's and you want to get a drink after your great meal, just open the door and you're in one of the coolest bars in Minneapolis, the living room at the W. So it's a great location. Manny's is right downtown Minneapolis, and there's a ton of stuff to do downtown Minneapolis. Minneapolis is like a mini Apple, so it's a metropolis, but a small one. So if there's anything downtown, it's pretty much walkable or a short Uber, one or the other. And everything's very condensed, everything's very compact. It gets cold there, so it's not a very drawn out metropolitan area. And one cool fun fact about Minneapolis is that all of the buildings are connected via skyway. So when it gets cold in the winter and it gets to minus 10 or minus 20 Fahrenheit, which it does there, when it gets to minus 10 or minus 20, if you know your way through the skyways, it's kind of like an above ground subway, if you will, in terms of tunnels and connectivity. If you know your ways in the skyway, you never have to take off your jacket. So it's one of the cool fun facts about Minneapolis. So it's right downtown. Downtown Minneapolis is a really fun neighborhood. There's whatever you like to do, whether you want to go to sports, you want to go to a club, you want to go to a bar, you want some art. Minneapolis offers everything that a major metropolitan city does. Quickly touch on the curb appeal of Manny's. It is something that I do touch on in the restaurants I go to, the curb appeal. Some people like to know about it. I would give Manny's a B- or a B on curb appeal. The things that have going for it is that it's connected to one of the coolest hotels in Minneapolis, the W, and it's on a corner. And both sides, each wall of Manny's has an illuminated sign, and you can get picked up on each corner. So that's a pretty cool thing. It says Manny's on each side, so it's easily identifiable if you're looking for the restaurant, and it's easy for rideshare access. I like to research the menu ahead of time, and I go in with a rifled surgical approach to my meal. I think a lot of food people do. Some people don't. Some people like to let the atmosphere and the scene speak to them, and then they order. For me, I have a pretty good idea of what I want going in, and then I remain malleable in case there's a special day or a chef's or bartender recommendation. But I knew going in, first and foremost, if you go to Manny's, you have to get the thick cut bacon. And a lot of proper steakhouses offer thick cut bacon. I will say this, Manny's isn't the best thick cut bacon I've had. It previously held that spot, but it's been replaced. But I will say it is the thickest thick cut bacon I've ever had. It's so thick you could almost call it a burger. This thick cut bacon is probably between 3/4 and 1 inch thick. And that might not seem thick, but take a look at the slice of bacon you might pull out of your freezer or at the grocery store. That thing is maybe a 1/16 to 1/8 of an inch tops. This is 1 inch thick cut bacon. And when you really have bacon that thick, you really get to taste the flavor of the meat. and you get to decide if you like it or not. To me, it's a little too much, but if you've never had thick cut bacon 1-inch thick before, it is a must at Manny's. I do get it every single time. And I actually did go with a special of the day at Manny's. It's something that's off the menu. It was a Creole barbecue shrimp. And I'm always wary of anything Creole that's not from New Orleans, because I'm usually wary of Creole that emanates outside of New Orleans, because in New Orleans, there's like an agreeable standard for Creole because it's eaten so much and it's so good. People have standards of what Creole should be. When you get outside of New Orleans, Creole becomes more rare, and therefore it's more subjective. So I'm always very careful of Creole outside of New Orleans, not because it can't be good, because it's rare and it's really up to the chef's interpretation. Nonetheless, I was sold, quote unquote, on the allure and the enticement of the dish, this Creole barbecued shrimp, and it was phenomenal. It wasn't too spicy. It had a great it had a great taste profile at the start, and it finished really nice. If it's on the menu, I highly, highly recommend it. It was actually one of the better things I had that night. So to start, I had the thick cut bacon. It was about 1 inch. I had the Creole barbecue shrimp, and then for the main course, and then for dinner came the Rude Boy. This is my first ever 85-day ribeye steak, and I can't remember if I've ever had a 60 or not. I remember watching one guy on YouTube before, and one guy had a 30, a 60, a 90, a 180, a 270, and I think he had a 420. And he said the 90 was his favorite. And when I watched that YouTube video, I was like, man, from 30, 60, 90, 180, 270 to 420, there's a lot of increments there. How did you choose the 90? So I chose the 85-day, and the 85-day, of course, has a very similar profile to the 90. Same type of aging, same type of timeline. Just a few days early. Frankly, I think it's a little bit of branding. They pulled out a few days early and maybe saying it's a bit chewier or whatever. But I had an 85-day ribeye, and I must say it was one of the best cuts of beef I've ever had. Arguably, maybe the best steak I ever had, but some of that is because it was so new to me. I think I was caught up in the experience and the excitement of my first elongated aged steak. But I must say the difference between a 30, and I have had a 60 before as I recollect, the difference between a 30, a 60, and a 90 is totally evident. All right, the 90, if I could describe it, and again, I'm a bit of a novice, I can't wait to have another one. But the difference between a 30, a 60, and a 90 is evident. I would consider the 90 to be more like beef jerky, where it seems a bit more dense. It's certainly not as succulent or as chewy or as buttery soft as maybe a 30-day or 60-day. You have a bit of roughness to it, okay? It's not as tender. But what you sacrifice in tenderness, you make up for in flavor. It almost had a type of beef jerky taste to it. Was a bit more dry, and it was a bit more sharp and a bit more tart, kind of like an aged cheddar, if you will, where if you have an aged cheddar and then just a regular mild cheddar, you can tell it has some sharpness to it. That's what I would consider in that 90-day, just a bit more pungent. It wasn't extreme at all. In fact, I really, really enjoyed it. I shared it with a friend of mine, and we both agreed it was one of the best cuts of steak we've ever had. So I can't wait to have another 90-day steak, whether it's at Manny's or somewhere else. I'll definitely indulge again, and it was more than worth the experience. I think it was a 26 or 28 ounce bone-in ribeye, and I think it was around, I have to say, $60 or $70, and it was well worth the price. It fed two of us. You split that in half, and that's $35 a person. Most fillets at a restaurant, most prime fillets are going to be between $40 and $60. So $35 a piece, and it was a prime 85-day ribeye. You couldn't go wrong. It was by far the best steak I had of 2018. So I had the barbecue shrimp, and then I had the thick cut bacon, and then a huge slam of 85-day prime ribeye steak. I wanted to go a little light with the side because I knew that dessert was coming. And I'll tell you why dessert was coming in a second. You're gonna love this. But before I get to that, I went with some caramelized Brussels sprouts, and they were fantastic. And then moving on to dessert, I had the biggest piece of brownie I've ever had in my entire life. I asked the guy what I should get, and I was gonna order 2 desserts. I have no shame in my game. Sometimes I order 2 desserts. Anyone who knows me, I like to do that, and I like to indulge when I go out. This is how you know you have a really good wait staff and bar staff. The guy actually coached me up. He saw all the food I was eating. He saw my food personality. He kind of saw where we were in the meal and he coached me up. He said, listen, save you $20 or $30. The second dessert isn't worth it. What you have coming is absolutely huge. And it was. I mean, look at this thing. If this isn't the biggest piece of brownie pie you ever seen in your entire life, I don't know what is. This thing was absolutely gargantuan. I couldn't have eaten a third of it by myself. I've never had it at Manny's before. I've been to Manny's a lot, and for some reason I've never ordered this. I'm a huge brownie guy, and I love brownies for dessert. I love brownies anytime. Never had this before, and it came out, and I was absolutely flabbergasted. This thing was mountainous. It was like the size of a football. So if you're ever at Manny's and you're looking for that wow factor dessert, you have to get the brownie sundae. So a little bit about Manny's. Manny's is open at 6:30 in the morning. I'm not sure anybody is up at the W at 6:30 in the morning, which is why I've never been to Manny's for breakfast. I just recently found out they're open for breakfast. I would love to go in there. In fact, next time I'm there, I'm going to ensure that I go in there for breakfast, because if the breakfast is anything like the dinner, it's going to be my favorite spot. I didn't stay at the W this time because I like to switch it up. I like to do reports on different hotels. But next time I think I'm going to go back there because I miss being able just to walk through that door and get in there and get a bite to eat. I sat at the bar. That's where I like to eat at a lot of steakhouses. You kind of get that old time feel where the barkeep is taking care of you. They're in white aprons, they're super classy. They mix really, really, really stiff drinks. They know the menu. They're complete and utter professionals, and you really get taken care of. The bar isn't that big, and when I was there were 2 or 3 people working it, so you got their attention easily. The wait staff was really, or I should say the bar staff was really, really nice. There was a Thursday night football game, and it was a main one. I forget what it was, but there were a lot of people watching it, and I wanted to watch a more lower caliber college football bowl game. I tipped the guy $20, and he put it on for me. He made me feel like I was the only person at the bar, and I gotta say, I really, really appreciate that. So I would consider Manny's atmosphere to be very cool, very classic, old-time Chicago steakhouse type feel with a modern twist. You're gonna get your checkerboard tablecloths in the bar area, and then you're going to get your red booths in the bar area, and then they have a complete and separate dining room, which is even more formal. So the bar is kind of more relaxed, and it kind of has a speakeasy type feel to it. It's not a speakeasy by any means, but it kind of has just that old, cool, classic Chicago type steakhouse charm. And then when you go into the dining room, that's even a bit more upscale and a bit more formal. There weren't a ton of families there. There were a few, mostly adults, mostly friends or people with their significant others. It's a classic steakhouse, so the drinks are prepared proper and they have a heavy hand, all right? If you're looking for a stiff drink, you're gonna get your money's worth. If you're looking for a stiff drink and you're looking to get your money's worth, you're gonna get it at Manny's. I had a few of them there. One was the maple bacon old fashioned, and another one was the cock and bull. Another one was the purple rain. So if you like a cocktail or a nice drink, Manny's is certainly not gonna disappoint you. They have a phenomenal wine list. I didn't have a chance to peruse it this time, but I have in the past, and you won't be disappointed. And I had let's see, I was there for a while, so don't judge me. And I worked my way around the list, and I did that for you. So I had a maple bacon old fashioned, I had an Irish cock and bull, I had a purple rain, and I had a raspberry mojito. So as you can see, again, there's no shame in my game. I worked my way around the cocktail list. I'm always on the lookout. I'm always on the lookout for fresh cocktails, and I'm always on the lookout for great drinks. And Manny's has a pretty creative menu for a steakhouse. A lot of steakhouses are just gonna have a Manhattan, they're just gonna have an old fashioned, they're just gonna have a martini, and they don't get really creative. I will say for a steakhouse, Manny's has a very creative cocktail list. Good beer menu, great wine list, overall, great bartenders who know how to mix a drink, and they are stiff. And you're certainly gonna get a heavy hand and a valuable pour if you go to Manny's. So if I had a wish list on what I would do the next time I went back to Manny's, here's what it would be. I wish I could do oysters. They didn't have any kind of oysters that I liked when I went there. I only do small oysters, like a Kumamoto or a Kushi. I think they had Blue Point or something like that. I just can't do medium oysters or large oysters. To me, that seems like a clam. I need them to be small. They didn't have any. I wish they did. I'd love to go back and try some there. Short rib slider looked phenomenal, and I'd like to try the bone marrow as well. If I'm going with somebody or a group of people next time, I want to get the triple stack seafood tower. They offer a single, double, and a triple. And the triple is for 8 people, but just the presence and the impact of this thing is absolutely amazing. It is a showstopper for sure. I've never ordered it and I really, really want to. I think the next time I go back, not only do I want to do breakfast, I want to do that triple stack seafood tower as well. The thing is a piece of art. While we're on the topic of monstrous gargantuan foods, I want to try either the bludgeon of beef or the double porterhouse. I mean, Manny's is your consummate steakhouse. In fact, they roll their food out on a cart. All right, they roll their food out in a cart. They show you the cuts ahead of time. Some of these cuts look like slabs of brick. They look like slabs of mortar. They're so thick. I mean, a softball-sized fillet does not do its justice. They're even thicker and rounder than a softball. Some of these cuts. Okay, so to have a bludgeon of beef for $111, I don't even remember what that was or what that looked like. But $111 for a bludgeon of beef, I got to try it. Similarly, the double porterhouse is also $111. I would love to get another person or 2 or 3 people around a table and to split that thing just for the presentation aspect. I haven't seen a lot of double porterhouses on the menu before. Some people call Manny's a top 10 steakhouse in the United States. And I could go either way on it. If I walked out there and somebody said it was a top 10 steakhouse, I'd say, yeah, absolutely. I know why presidents and athletes and the who's who come here when they're in Minneapolis. And then if someone said, you know what, it doesn't belong in the top 10, I could see that as well, because how do you rate the top 10 steakhouses in the United States? It's really, 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 really hard. All I know is that if you were to put Manny's in that category, which some articles do, I wouldn't disagree with you. So a double porterhouse or a bludgeon of beef at one of the best steakhouses in America, and by far the best steakhouse in Minneapolis, I'm in. And I've never had a Nova Scotia lobster tail before. I know that Maine has a lot of lobsters. Nova Scotia is even a step above Maine. I'm not sure if that's what they're subliminally trying to tell you, that, hey, look, this Nova Scotia is geographically above Maine, therefore it's higher, therefore it's colder, therefore it has more value. I'm not sure if that's a subliminal message you're trying to say. I'm not sure if it's branding, or maybe Nova Scotia has the best lobsters. Comment below. I'm not sure, but I really, really want to try it. Sometimes I do like to go to steakhouses and order the seafood. A lot of people ignore them and only go with the beef. I'm not afraid to do that. A lot of steakhouses is where I've had my best seafood dinners at. So next time I go in there, I would like to try it. There's clearly a lot of things on my wish list. I don't know if it's going to happen next time, but I would like to try that Nova Scotia lobster tail. You know, there's no slight to Birch, and there's no knock on Spoon and Stable. Birch would probably be the second best place to go. It doesn't have the atmosphere, the nameplate, the history, or consistency of Manny's. It just isn't there yet. A lot of people who live in Minneapolis will tell you that Birch is the better place. Personally, I think it's marketing. It's a very hot place. It's newer than Manny's, and it has a lot of beef, and it has a lot of sentiment. It's certainly the zeitgeist or the spirit of the times. It's a great place, but it doesn't have the nameplate or the history or the tenure that Manny's does. Spoon and Stable doesn't have the class or the atmosphere to compete with Manny's. Again, if you went to Spoon and Stable, Manny's, or Birch, you're not going to be disappointed. This is not a knock on those places. But if I have one night in Minneapolis, I'm going to Manny's.